Hi everybody, welcome back to Best of British Blackwell. Thank you for joining us again. It's been a little while since my last video, so I will apologise for that. But I've got an absolute cracker for you this week. I'm going to be making a roasted rack of lamb. I'm going to be making it with some potato rosti, some lovely fresh asparagus and some seasonal veg. Come over, take a look at our ingredients and we'll make a start. Okay, so let's go through all of our ingredients, starting with the main ingredient first. I've got here some rack of lamb. As you can see, this is obviously the rib cage of the lamb there. It's beautiful. You've got your lovely kind of fillet of meat running through there. You've also got some lovely meat running up the sides, and there's some lovely meat running in the bones as well. I'm going to talk a little bit more later how to prepare this, but this is an unprepared rack of lamb, and I'll tell you a little bit later why I choose this particular cut of meat above the prepared rack of lamb. What else have we got? We have got some potatoes. Obviously we're going to be making some potato rosti. We've got some grated carrot, which is also going to go in our potato rosti. We've got some grated cheese, again for the potato rosti, and the last two ingredients for the potato rosti are going to be our flour and our egg. I might also throw some of our spring onions in there as well. We've got some lovely fresh asparagus. Asparagus coming right back into season now as well, so this is going to be lovely. I've got some broccoli, and finally I've got some peas. Okay, so let's make a start on the lamb. Main ingredient here obviously. What I mentioned earlier is that I've bought here an unprepared rack of lamb. So basically what that means is that the butcher hasn't taken the skin off of the top here, and they also haven't polished down the bones for me or French trimmed the bones. I like to do that myself, mainly because I like to keep some of the ingredients that come as a result of that. So if I do French trim these bones, I like to keep the pieces of meat and sinew from the inside to make some stock. But also, I actually like to keep the meat and the sinew on the side here because it actually helps to retain the moisture. And as you can see, in between these rib bones here, you've got a lovely bit of meat in there as well. You can see it running through the top. I don't actually like to trim that off. If you go to a top class restaurant, naturally they'll start to trim that off. But actually there's a lot of meat in there as well, so I like to keep it. What I do like to do though is start to trim the skin and the fat off of the top here, and it's quite easy to do that. If you look at a decent piece of meat like this, you can see that you can start to peel this off pretty easily by hand. And then slightly later on you'll find that you're going to need a knife to separate the skin and the meat here. So basically all I'm going to do is take a sharp knife. There's going to be lots of people out there saying that you should be cutting away from yourself, and I absolutely should here. But nice sharp knife, start to cut this skin off. This is not going to taste too good. As you can see, it's quite a leathery, thick texture there. It's not going to render down, it's not going to give you a nice flavour, and it's not going to add to the quality of your meal. So start to cut that off. As you can see, I'm running the knife through here. I haven't exposed any of the flesh of the meat yet. It's going to take me about 5 or 10 minutes to start to get the rest of this this skin off. Let me show you what this looks like when I'm done. Okay, so we're done with the trimming of the lamb. As you can see, this side of the meat we haven't really touched. There's no fat on this side. It's absolutely beautiful. And on this side here, we've cut away most of the skin. You can see we've got a little bit of sinewy fat there on this side of the meat. But don't worry about that, because before we cook this, we're going to render this down in the pan a little bit. We're going to fry it off a tad. So that fat will start to render down and it will basically melt away. All that we need to do now, get some pepper. Both sides of this meat. The other thing to add as well is obviously this meat's been out of the fridge for a little while. You don't want to work on lamb or steak or beef or chicken or anything like that when it's cold. Get it down to room temperature, much easier to handle. So we've seasoned it up now. We're going to let it rest to one side just before we start cooking. Next stage is going to be our potato rostis. Okay, potato rostis. I don't actually think these are a British dish, but the lamb that I'm cooking here certainly is. But it's also a lovely accompaniment to a lovely lamb dish and makes a nice change from roast potatoes or new potatoes. What you're going to need, nice big bowl, cheese grater. I'm going to be using the coarse side of the grater here. Get your potatoes, grate them into this bowl. Okay, so the potatoes are grated now. As you can see, they're coarsely grated, very similar to the carrots and the cheese that we're going to use. They're all the same kind of texture. What I need to do with these now is take this bowl of potatoes, stick them in the sink and let the tap run over them for a little while. What I want to do is I want to get the starch out of these potatoes. There we go. Hopefully, as you can see from this, the water's really cloudy. Don't have the water on too fast because the potatoes will start to spill over the top. All you're looking to do is create a little bit of a filter here, and as you can see, that cloudy water in about 10 minutes time will be nice and clear, and you know that you've lost most of the starch from that water. Just let it crack on. While that's happening, you can start to prepare your veg. In terms of preparing my other veg, I've gone nice and simple. The peas we're just going to boil away, the broccoli we're just going to boil away as well, keep it nice and al dente. At the last minute when those peas start to boil, we're going to be adding some of the lovely Tracomans mint jelly. I will show you that a little bit later on. As you can see, I've got my pan ready for my Rostis here to give them their initial cook, and I've got another pan here ready for my rack of lamb to go in. Okay, our potatoes have been rinsing now for about 10 or 15 minutes. I've strained them into a colander here, as you can see. What I've also done is the original bowl that I grated them into, I've cleaned and dried that out. That's very important. Now what we're looking to do is get the moisture out of these potatoes. So what we do is in the colander here, we give them a nice push down, get some tissue wrapped around them, and get as much moisture out of these potatoes as you possibly can. Now we're not done there. What we do now is, as you can see, you know, you've got some water at the bottom here. What we do now is just take this to one side, get yourself a nice, clean, dry tea towel, whack it over your board like this, go 1, 2, 3, bang, straight on, all of those potatoes in there, as you can see. Put the colander to one side. Now drag the corners of this tea towel together, and what we're going to do is get our bowl back over here. We're going to get all of the potato in the bottom here, as you can see, and then we're going to start to twist this tea towel, and as you can see, the water and the liquid from this potato is going to start to squeeze through. You can see it running over my hands there into this bowl. We need to remove as much of the liquid from these potatoes as possible. Final step in preparing these potatoes is quite simple. What I like to do is whack some gloves on, because I'm going to be getting my hands in here. Keeps my hands nice and clean, keeps the dish nice and clean as well. First things first, let's add some seasoning in there. Let's start with the garlic granules. I would say we need around about a tablespoon of garlic granules in there. Finally, in terms of our dry ingredients, we get some salt, we get some pepper. I like a lot of pepper, so I put quite a bit in there. Let's go with our additional ingredients, which are our spring onions, beautiful, our carrots. They're going to add a lovely colour here, and considering that we fry these off a little bit later as well, they just add that lovely additional kind of hue to the dish. We've got our cheese in there as well, and then what we do is we take our egg, we crack it in, and then we get our hands in there. Now we start to mix this together. This is where the gloves come in nice and handy. You can break down your additional ingredients as well. I've not quite chopped that bit of spring onion through, so it helps to get your hand in there and mix this together. As you can see, it comes together quite nicely. Everything's been grated and shredded. It's going to take about 2 or 3 minutes to get this mixed together to the extent that you need it. The ingredients are still quite wet as well, you know. Obviously the carrots have some moisture to them, the spring onions have some moisture to them, the egg adds moisture in there as well, but it's a binding ingredient, and the cheese is quite malleable and wet as well. So what we start to do as we mix all the ingredients together is we add some flour, And that is going to help us create almost like a potato cake, and I'm going to show you how we do that a little bit later on. Okay, so here we go. Everything's mixed together quite nicely. You can see it's formed quite a solid texture for us to work with. You'll see I've still got my gloves on here. What I've done is I've taken my chopping board and I've covered it with some cling film. I've got my cutouts here, which I'm going to use to make my Rosti cakes. And all I do is I get a nice big handful, smack it straight bang in the middle of this mould or shape. And the key with this is that you give it a good push down and you add some more to the top as well. You want these to be well filled. Also, the more you push down, the better formed they're going to be too. Take another one, get a decent amount of the mixture. As you can see, it's quite messy, so I'd always advise using gloves. It just keeps things nice and clean, nice and tidy. You don't have to constantly keep washing your hands because you're going to be handling meat as well. Give it a good push down. Doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. Then what you do is you take your mould, take it off. There we go. I reckon we're going to get 4 decent sized Rostis out of here. I don't think we'll get much more than that. And to be honest with you, I don't think we need much more than that either. There we go. Okay, so our Rostis are ready to fry off for the first time. I've kept them in their little rings, which is quite handy. And all you do is take a little egg slicer, slide it underneath. They're on cling film, so it's going to be nice and easy to do. As you can see, you just get it on the egg slicer here and introduce it into the pan like so. Just leave it in the ring for the first couple of minutes. Let it take its shape. Because we've got 2 of the rings, we can do these 2 at a time. No problem at all. Second one, straight on there. Leave it in the ring. Couple of minutes either side. We're going to be ready to go. Okay, so these have been in the pan now for about 3 minutes. What we do here is I'm going to take an oven glove because the tops of these moulds are going to be very warm. I'm going to take my egg slicer here, turn it over, excuse me, try that again, turn it over and fry it on the other side. And there they are. The potato Rostis have been fried off on either side. They're looking that lovely golden brown texture. They've kept their shape really nicely. Final thing that we're going to do is when we're getting ready to prepare our lamb and get the dish together, these are just going to go in the oven for about 10 or 15 minutes just to finish them off on the inside. Okay, so our potato Rostis are done. Our veg is cooking away now. Now we're going to start with this lamb. Now you may think that we're cooking this lamb a little bit late in the day, but you know, lamb doesn't need a great deal of cooking. Especially the rack of lamb, you've got a lovely tender piece of meat in there, so the last thing you want to do is overcook it. I like my lamb to be about medium, not too rare, not too well done. And what do? We take this piece of lamb, we put it face down in a nice hot pan, just to start to brown that off. Now this pan here contains the same oil that we fried the potato Rostis in. That's only going to add to the flavour. You're not looking to cook this lamb through right away, you're just looking to brown it off, give it a nice colour, nice texture before we finish it off in the oven. Just while our lamb is searing away, check these peas out. Beautiful fresh garden peas. What better than to just sweeten them up a little bit with some beautiful Trackerment fresh mint jelly. I can't recommend this stuff enough. Nice big teaspoon in there, give it a stir. It's going to add sweetness, it's going to add that lovely fresh mint flavour as well, which goes perfect with your lamb. So lamb's been skimmed right down for about 2 minutes now. Look at that beautiful colour on there. Just turn it over, start cooking it on the other side. While it's doing that, you can baste this with some beautiful trufflement mint sauce. Here we go. While it's cooking on the other side, nice big teaspoon with some trufflement mint sauce. Get your brush, start to work that in. Give it a beautiful base with that sauce. That's going to give you a lovely, lovely flavour. Trufflement mint sauce, perfect every time. Okay, so final piece of the jigsaw really is the pan that you've cooked the lamb in earlier. Just take it, just add a little bit of butter. I would say add a teaspoon of butter in there. Let that melt down. You don't need to add any seasoning to this pan whatsoever because obviously our lambs have some lovely seasoning. Our potato Rostis have had seasoning as well, so this pan is really going to be full of flavour. Get your asparagus in there and fry that down a little bit. It's only going to take about 4 or 5 minutes and we're about ready to serve this dish up. Okay, so we are just at the stage where we're about to serve up, but what I wanted to do is show you how I get this lamb ready for serving. Now, as you can see, it's cooked down, it's been fried off on the top, fried off on the other side as well, and then it's been finished off in the oven. Now, what I like to do just before serving, just carve into one of these pieces of lamb, just to make sure that we've got the texture absolutely perfect. And as you can see, it's absolutely bang on. Okay, so I think you've heard me talk about this dish enough. I'm going to start to plate this up now. First thing to go on the plate here is going to be our wonderful potato rosti. As you can see, beautiful golden brown texture all the way around there. Next up, we're going to have some lovely broccoli. Doesn't need to be too pretty. This time of year, this ingredient is absolutely superb. Now we're going to get some lovely fresh asparagus on this plate. Like I said earlier, just coming back into season, just starting to reach its optimum taste, texture, flavour. Finally, in terms of vegetables, a lovely little set of peas straight in the middle there. Can't beat these greens, absolutely superb. They've got that lovely trufflement mint jelly in there as well. And then what do we do? In terms of the meat, we've got our absolutely wonderful pieces of rack of lamb. We're going to serve ourselves up a couple of lovely pieces there, right on top of that rosti. And then finally, how do we finish it off? Something just to give you that final touch of richness all the way through. Some lovely lamb jus straight over the top. Take a look at that. Now, that has taken me around about an hour to prepare and produce. Rack of lamb is not the most inexpensive piece of meat that you will find, I grant you that, but you could do this with a breast of lamb, you could do this with a leg of lamb or a shoulder of lamb. It doesn't even need to be lamb, you could do yourself a nice piece of steak. The broccoli, the peas, the asparagus and the potatoes, they cost you absolutely pennies. This is going to be a really, really cheap dish to make. You can do it with a chicken breast, whatever you want, but the flavours in there are absolutely superb. I urge you to give it a go. Enjoy, everybody.